Hey guys, I mentioned on my Halo video that I was going to do a Roost video next. It's been a while since I've done something on Roost. I'll be honest with you transparently, I recorded this video once upon a time already. Not that long ago, I recorded it last night, 2 nights ago. It did not go well. So I was reviewing it, I was thinking maybe we can edit some stuff out, post it anyways, and I decided in the end that I'll just redo the video. So here I am, take two, we'll try again. And I don't know, if we're lucky, it'll go out. If not, it'll never see the light of day. And we're going to go through and try to get this to work properly from the start. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. The point of this video is to, one, get back into Roost, throw some Roost love on my YouTube channel. Number two, there are some things that you can do that are kind of cool within Roost using the forms that are not really well known, or like tips and tricks and stuff like that. So I'm going to go through and show how to do that and what that looks like. And I'm going to use Roost under the MSP Advisors tenant, and I'm going to use a Halo demo for MSP Advisors for this demo, so we can see how the integration works and what it is we're talking about. So what I specifically want to showcase is if we look at customers, we can see in the customers in Halo, we get the list of clients, and we also get a list of open tickets. What I want to do is I want to create this form that'll allow you to, number one, pick the client you want to do. So I'm going to create a demo form for YouTube. The idea is that in the form you collect fields and data, and then you do something with it. So in this case, I'm not going to build out a whole workflow. I'm not going to get like end-to-end completion of some sort of function. I'm just going to showcase and demonstrate using the form itself and some of the things you can do within it. So let's just say that in this form, or assume in this form, we're going to have a dropdown that asks to pick a client. So here's the dropdown. We're going to say this is the client, is the name, and please, wow, please select the client you want to XYZ on, whatever. Please select the client. Perfect. And this is going to be a dropdown right now. You can see the dropdowns are made up of two kinds of data types, I guess. There's two types coming together for each item in the dropdown. One is the label, which is what's displayed in the dropdown, and two is the value, which is what value gets passed to the backend workflow when you finally submit the form. And so in this case, we got placeholder one, placeholder value two, so on and so forth. And then the next thing I want to talk about, like the next thing we're going to throw on here, is the ability to put text and markdown on the form. And so this is used to be able to provide guidance, select a client, and then enter information, then click submit, right? So this is like a way to provide walkthrough and step-by-step instructions. And you can have like some more multi-select radio buttons and then other markdown. And so you can provide like a UI of sorts, a very limited UI, to the user putting the form in, submitting that form, to guide them through that form submission. And so what is the point of this? Let's just delete some of these fields we're not going to use in the end, and we'll throw some more text markdown stuff in here just for fun. And let's see what this looks like. If we hit the preview button, we can see that here's the dropdown. We can choose placeholder 1, 2, 3, and then some more placeholder texts that exist. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say, again, we're looking for clients that have open tickets, right? So let's say we want to say this client has open tickets. And we're going to say here, this client has no open tickets. Okay. And then, I don't know, we can get rid of this one. Now, one of the things that I'm going to show here is that these text markdown supports Jinja to an extent. This is all markdown, and so if you know markdown syntax, you can create headers that are based off the number of hashes that are in there. You can create lists. You can do some other stuff like bold text or make them italics. You can throw a horizontal line across, or a horizontal ruler, whatever you want to call it. And you can also do something where you can provide like colored banners of sorts, like the div danger warning, etc. from Bootstrap, as an example. And so you do that by doing 3 colons And then you can put like the type of warning is supported, tip is supported, and I think that's really it. And then you can do text in here. This is a alert banner, and then you do 3 to end that, so that future things non-alert text, right, comes outside of the banner. If you were to remove that, it would extend the banner to be multi-point. Throw that back in there, and you can even do things like make it a full-sized header and so on and so forth. So you can do a lot of things inside of here. You can like bold. That's italics. Sorry, you can bold, right, specific words. So now the point of this is we're going to take this and we're going to turn this into an alert that says danger, right? So this is going to say that the client has open tickets, not danger, warning. I always do that. Okay, warning, not danger. We're going to turn this into a tip because we don't care that there's no open tickets. It's just some useful information. There we go. And so now we've got select the client, right? So we can kind of see how we're building out some sort of form, or at least some sort of responsive form that'll provide feedback to the user as they're filling it in. But we still have to fill this drop down in, right? We come here, we see like this is not helpful. How do we make this work? So the first thing we want to do is number one, we want to fill the placeholder with actual real values. And you do that by using a dynamic option. So here you have dynamic options, which is going to say pull options dynamically from the API. We're going to turn that on. And now you have the option of choosing your API and your resource, which is like basically the API is going to be your connection, and then resource is going to be the API endpoint, right? And so we can do that. But if we do that, we don't really get, well, I don't even know if it's actually going to work. No, we can't even, nothing work. That's not working. So what we really want to do is we want to have a level of control over what information is going to come across, because we can't guarantee we're going to get the total open tickets here. And so we want to actually do something that's workflow generated. Problem is we don't have any workflows right now that can actually do that, where it can grab the information. So I'm going to save the form. Okay, we're going to leave it and we're going to start building out that workflow. So let's create a new workflow. Halo options, let's say dynamic options. Now in workflows, there are 2 different types of workflows that exist. One of them is called a standard workflow for the workflow type. The other one is the options generator, and we want to do the option generator. It's going to be a workflow that generates options for the form. So we're going to click submit. And again, the way I got there is by clicking the pencil next to here. If you need to do override on the integration, depending on if the form is going to be in a different context, then we want to add a trigger, and that trigger is going to be core always pass, right? It's an integration override, really. Integration override for orgs, right? We'll turn it on, and we can say we need an integration override for Halo, and that integration is going to be based off of the mapping. It'll populate in a moment. Not sure why it's not. Let's hit submit. Cancel. Let's go back in. There we go. Use org mapping. Submit. Okay. So like we can do that. Again, not every integration requires an integration override depending on how it's being used. If it's being used in the context of the parent MSP org, it's not needed. If you're going to go into the context of the individual client under the MSP, you may want to do the integration override to redirect the integration to go through what you're doing there. If you have multi-tenanting or multiple instances under a single org, you may want to do integration override to direct it across. But if you're doing an options generator, you create that trigger, and then on the form, you include that trigger. So in this case, we're going to do Halo, and let's just do list clients, and let's see if this works. So we will list clients real quick. And what should happen is I'm running an MSP Advisors tenant, and I should be able to test this and pull back a list of clients. Is it running? It says it's running. There it goes. Let's go back to our form, and here we have a list of clients. Now, the thing that we're looking for is we're looking for the total number of open tickets, right? Let's not lose sight of what we're trying to do. We don't have the open tickets in this response. We can come through here and see here's from here to here is a client, from the curly brace to the curly brace is the full client that gets returned. And I don't see, I see the logo. I see logo is nice. I don't see the ability to, like, there's not, the list of open tickets is not here. I don't see it. And so what we want to do is we can think about how this works, because we see it as it's here. And so we can just jump into inspect. And I'm going to dock that to the same window so that we can actually see it on my share. Wow, nice and nasty. All right, let's go to network. And so network is going to be basically every request that gets made to the server and the response that comes back. And so I'm filtering for API, so it's going to give me all the API stuff. I'm going to refresh this page, and we should see that it'll include a call out to client right here, client. And we come here and look at the response, and then we can see now we can start searching for it, but it's going to be like a lot. There's a lot here. But we can see that there's open ticket numbers here, and so we can do something like search for 3. Searching for 3 by itself is not going to work, but generally speaking, we know the standard of a JSON object. It's going to be property, colon, and then property name, quote, colon, space, and then the value, what it is we're looking for. If it's an integer, it's not going to be in quotes. If it's not an integer, it may be in quotes. Here, the value we're looking for is a 3. It's probably not going to be in quotes. And so we can just do Control F inside the response and search for colon space 3. And boom, right here we can see it found one of 3 results. The first result is under open ticket count. So we can see that in this response, we have the list of clients, and it includes the open tickets. And so whatever API call is being made here is probably the one we want to use to capture that data so we can provide that information on the form. And so if we look here on the headers tab, we can see the full request URL. So we're just going to copy that, and then we're going to close DevTools, and we're going to flip back here. Instead of doing a list clients, we're going to do a generic action. So first of all, I'm going to start with a noop. You should always start your workflows with a noop. And then here's my generic API request. You can also scroll through and find it. It's going to be here somewhere. So if we do API request, if I can spell correctly, then you can see Halo PSA API requests right here. I haven't marked in my favorites, so therefore I can just right click and add it in there. Now I like naming my stuff, so I'm going to rename this to start here. This is the very beginning. Anything that you would want to put in, like data aliases and stuff like that, will go there. Let's drag to the next step. And here I'm going to rename this to say list clients. And we can even say with open tickets. Okay. And so we know what we need to make the URL path with this, because it's a generic API call. I don't have to specify the base host name. Right, so it wants me to specify the path for the API, not including the host name or API prefix. I just need to specify the end. And so I can remove everything from here to here, including the /. And now I'm just going to pull client, exclude general user, undefined, exclude agents, undefined. Right, so these are parameters I'm specifying. These are called query parameters on the HTTP call, and they're specifying how the behaviors should exist. So now, what's so special about this call that I'm getting back open tickets? If you read through each of the parameters, you'll end up seeing we've got exclude agents, exclude default site users, exclude internal is set to true, paginate set to true, page size is 100, page number 1, include inactive is false, column ID equals 8, so that's a column profile, include columns is true, show counts, look at that right here, show counts equals true, and that's going to be what returns back the open tickets, the open opportunities, and other kinds of things in that object. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that good, close. I'm going to publish this. We're going to test it again. And let's see what comes back. We should get a list of clients, and we should be able to see the total open tickets along the list of clients. Okay. It does look like it's taken some time for these executions to kick off. So I don't know if they're doing some sort of maintenance or whatnot. Things are definitely going slower than they normally do. It is also 1 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, so that could be why. It could be doing something. All right, we've got open ticket count, open ticket ops, open opportunities count 2 and 3, and so we want the open ticket count, and so on and so forth. And then we've got each client gets their own set of what that is. Here's 6, and you see the name is under name, and so on. Okay, so we have our workflow, right? now we need to tie it into the form. So I'm going to open dashboard in a new tab. We're going to flip over to the forms. We're going to go to the demo form for YouTube, and I'm going to change this to be a workflow generated. And now, because that workflow is set to be an options generator workflow, I can choose it from this list. It has to be set to that type in order for it to show up here. The next thing I need to do is I need to figure out, okay, how am I passing these values, these information to the dropdown itself? How does that work? The way it happens, if you remember, we had an ID and a label when we were not doing a dynamic workflow, a dynamic options list. We had manually defined placeholder value 1, placeholder value 2, value 1, value 2, so on and so forth for the label and ID. Here we specify the properties of a JSON object that will be used to populate each of these areas. So we need to provide a list. If you remember my Jinja 101, or if you just know Jinja, or in general programming, a list or an array is a series of objects that are, or a sequence of objects that are in one object called a list or an array. And so within each series, within each index of that list, you have a set of objects, and that object contains a dictionary, it's called in Python, or a mapping where you have a property colon value, property colon value. So in this case, you have to provide a list of objects, and that object has to be made up of a label and an ID. And we can rename these to whatever we want. So we can change it to name and value, or name and data, or whatever it is. Whatever it is that we're presenting in the object, it has to match here so that it knows what to do with what's being given. Okay, so we're almost done here. We're going to go to back to the workflow, and we're going to create that kind of object that we need. So we're going to go to here, we're going to create a data alias, and we're going to say output. So now in order to reference this, it'll be ctx.output essentially. And we're going to reference the results of this workflow. I don't know if I can, we'll just tasks dot list clients dot result, because I don't know how many results, whatever, I have to go down for the other one. The response comes back in clients dot clients. And because the clients is a list, I'm going to do a list comprehension to it for item in. And then we're going to start building our, let's do the following. We need to do ID, which is going to be the value, right? ID is value. So I'm going to pass the entire item, which is going to be the entire client, in as ID. And then I'm going to do comma. And my next object is going to be, yeah, see, I'm trying to keep things neat, but it's doing a great job with the formatting. Here we go. So let's do a comma, and then the next one's going to be label. And here it's going to be item.name, which we know is going to be the name of the client. So it's going to present the name of the client in the dropdown, and the whole client itself will be the value. The entire JSON object will be the value that's going to get selected. Okay. And then we can do for item in. And just for fun, we're going to use the hyphens at the end so that it eats up any preceding and post leading and trailing spaces. There we go. Preceding or trailing spaces. We're going to remove that. And this is going to basically create an object. It's going to specify a list of clients that are written out in that format. And the last thing that we need to do is we need to come here and we need to create an output configuration, because that's what gets consumed by the form. With Roost, every form that you're going to pass options into has to be set as options. And then we're just going to say ctx.output right there. It's auto-populating. And that's going to be what gets pushed into options for us. We're going to publish the flow, and we're going to go to the form, and we're just going to preview it and see what happens. Okay, the workflow is running, and we have a list of clients, just like that. Okay. Now, if you remember, we didn't actually do anything to any of this stuff here. And so let's see how this works. If I do placeholder text, let's replace this with ctx dot. Notice I'm getting now auto-populated information, ctx.client, and see what happens. So now let's preview. Set to none, and I'm going to choose Terry's chocolate. And boom, I have a really, really long amount of JSON here that gets passed in, which is nice. So we need to actually address what it is that we want to showcase. In this case, I want to display, I don't know, let's say open tickets. What was it? Let's come here and we can take a look at what HJK element O all the way past the logo to open ticket count, right? So we want to grab that. We want to display it here. And let's review that. Right. So now I don't have anything selected. It can't do this Jinja. It doesn't know what it is until I go ahead and select something, and then it should change. Doesn't know what it is still. So either my Jinja is wrong, or it doesn't like what I did there. So let's do something. .value .open ticket count. Let's see if that works. There we go, 6, right? Because everything goes into the value. Remember the value properties where the Jinja actually is. So I need to address the value in order to get to the actual underlying Jinja. And instead, let's do something. Let's remove this part, and we can like showcase the name or other information around. Boom. All right, we can showcase other information that's inside the object. We can get the address. We can display the notes. We can display the logo technically. Markdown does support the logo. And so we can do something like, let's see if I remember how to do the logo in Markdown from memory. It'll be something like, this, potentially. Let's see. Nope, it did. Maybe I'm doing this backwards. Maybe it's this. An image is just like a placeholder text. It doesn't need to be anything. The logo is what really matters. The URL. Well, it made it a link. Hold on. This is now going to bother me. We're just going to jump to ChatGPT real quick, and I'm going to grab how to do this. Oh, duh. Okay, my bad. So I just need to do an exclamation mark right there. And let's see what happens. Boom, I got an image, right? And that's what it's called. And we can actually change the image to say CTX. Well, we'll do the CTX.client.value.name. Okay. And so now if we do this, we can do Mario's and Luigi's Pizza Place, and we've got the pizza, and it says Mario and Luigi's Pizza Place, right? So, like the point is that you can do a lot of stuff here with Jinja and Markdown. Cool. Now, how do we actually get to the point of what we were trying to do? We now we have the number of open tickets. We want to actually like do stuff with this thing. So first of all, what we can do is we can start using Jinja conditions. So let's say that like this is pretty ugly. What happens if we open it up and there's nothing here? We don't want all this crap on the screen. So let's go to set field conditions. Here we can choose to say that if ctx.client, and we'll just do D. So if this evaluates to true, then we'll show it. Otherwise, it'll hide itself. Okay, and let's see what happens. Now we go to preview, and it hasn't. It's not hidden. So, oh, now it goes. It just took time. Again, system's going a little slow right now, but it did eventually hide. And now if I go ahead and choose a client, it should populate. And if we remove the client, it should hide itself. And if we choose a different client, it'll populate, and so on and so forth. So let's start filling in some information about this, right? So we can say, is shown above, and then we can take this out, and we can say something like, I don't know, what's information that we may want to show in the client dynamically that would be cool to display. That logo is really long. It's really getting on my nerves. Now we gotta go back over the logo again. And we've got like a color scheme. We got the call date, which was like the last time the client was called. We got the customer type is 6. You know, we can get more information like the client and address and stuff like that and show that as well. We can get the notes. Let's just display the notes technically. Let's just do that. .client .value .notes. Okay. And we're going to say, all right, so now it's actually like starting to make sense. Now, remember we did like field conditions here, right? So we can kind of do the same thing here and here. So let's come back and say, when do we want this to display? Only when the number of open tickets is greater than 0. And so we already have a lot of the syntax that we need for this. We're going to copy this, and we're going to go here. We're going to do set field condition, add a Jinja condition, and we're going to say dot open ticket something, right? What was it? Open tickets count, open ticket count, not plural, greater than 0. Okay, then we're going to show it. And then we're going to say, we're going to copy that whole thing actually. And we're going to do this and say equals 0, close, save, submit. Okay, so now what happens if we actually do this? Boom. We have a nice clean form, completely empty. Now let's walk my way through starting to fill out this form. I'm going to hit chart Terry's Chocolates. Here's the client I've selected. Here are the notes for the client. The client has open tickets. Boom. Okay, what about who doesn't have open tickets? Let's say Ron's Ironworks, right? So let's go ahead and choose Ron's Ironworks. Well, some of the Jinja hasn't updated, which is interesting. Let's clear it out and start over. Okay, Ron's Ironworks. Hey, it doesn't seem to have liked. Still showing Terry's Chocolate. But it did update here. Client has no open tickets, so that's interesting. Whereas if we go back to Terry's Chocolates, client has open tickets. If we go to Tony's Tire Emporium or Mario's, it is not updating. Let's do some stuff here. Let's say ctx.client.value.open ticket count. And we're just going to copy that to that. Okay. And so theoretically, the message is exactly the same. I don't have to use 2 different ones, but I want it to be a different color, indicating there's no problems. Now let's view this and see what happens. So if I do Terry's Chocolates, I got Terry's Chocolates. I have 3 open tickets. If I flip it over to Tony's Emporium, I have 6 open tickets. So this is updating just fine. It's the top one that's not working. So let's do something here. Like I'm kind of using JSON. I'm using JSON as the item, and it's not supposed to be there. Notice if I turn off like dynamic options, this is like text, right? This is not really an object, and I'm really cramming an object in there. So let's go ahead and set this back to the workflow that we want. We can do the trigger. By the way, this is where you specify the override for if you have a trigger. And let's go ahead and resave that again. And now let's see if I can adjust this a little bit. I'm going to go back to my form, my workflow, and I'm going to change item to item JSON dump. Okay, and that's going to stringify the JSON object. It's going to turn into one big string as opposed to an object. And see if it can parse that a little bit better. And now we're going to come here. Because I'm doing that, I now have to basically JSON parse everywhere I'm referencing the client value here, this has to become a JSON parse, because otherwise it's just a string. It doesn't know what it is, right? So now it's going to turn it back into an object when it's looking at it. Same thing here. So let's do that again. We're going to open, close parentheses, JSON parse, and then we're going to look at the notes. And then in here, we're going to do the exact same thing. CTX client value, which is going to be here to here. Open, close parenthesis, JSON parse. Okay. And then we're going to do the same exact thing here. We're almost done. The last thing that we need to do is we're going to have to do it for our conditions. We don't have to do it here. We're not doing anything special. We're just grabbing whether or not the client has anything. Here, we're actually doing something against the value. So we're going to have to do it here. So we're going to come here to value, open, close, JSON parse, open ticket count, and we're going to do the exact same thing here. Set field conditions, CTX client value, open, close, JSON parse, and then that open ticket count equals 0, close, and save. All right, what do you think? Let's refresh. The workflow has to rerun again because the workflow has been changed. Workflow did run, by the way. Oop, the Jinja did not. Okay, now the Jinja executed. Now it's hiding. Let's go ahead and choose a client. And now we still have our Terry's Chocolate logo. We have 3 open tickets. We didn't break anything. Let's see if it'll properly switch now. I don't know if this will work or if there's some other reason why it's not switching. Doesn't look like it made any difference. So that's interesting. Let's go ahead and cancel out of here. And let's re-preview and just choose a different client from the get-go and see if what happens. Okay, I bet you I know what's going on. The notes probably isn't valid for every client, and therefore it's breaking the Jinja throughout the entire item. So let's go here and let's just change this to say, we're going to say default D, and then we're going to put a default value if there's nothing there that says no notes exist. Okay. And so now let's come back in here and let's choose Mario. And there we go. No notes exist. So that was the issue. The Jinja wasn't running because there was an invalid value. We were expecting notes to be there, and there were no notes. Now Ron's Ironworks updates, Tony's Chocolate updates. Here we have actual notes, the example notes. And if we switch to Tony's Tire Imperium, I've got no notes exist and 6 open tickets. Now, if we go back to Ron's Ironworks, you can see that the client has 0 open tickets. And so this is how you would basically build out the form to be dynamic. You can provide it, you can show text to guide the user based off value. You can do a bunch of stuff with that. Just by cramming in a bunch of your data when you're doing an options generator workflow and filling in the dropdown with dynamic options, you can cram the entire item into it. I wouldn't go too crazy. I don't know how long, like how big, how much data it can take before things start slowing down, but you can jam the data that you want that's relevant for your form to be user-friendly, and then do logic. These logic conditions exist for every field type. So you can throw additional multi-select in there, and you can do set field conditions and Jinja conditions based off of the values that exist on the selected item. So you can do warnings and formatted color text. You can do images and logos and things like that. So you can really go a little crazy. Anyways, I hope this was helpful to you. I hope this was fun. I hope I didn't miss anything. And yeah, leave your comments below. Thanks for watching.